Hey everyone, Shalom. Welcome back to my channel. So in this particular video, we're going to discuss the context of John 3:16. I noticed that this verse is widely misinterpreted by the mainstream religions, and it's designed to be that way by them so as to make revenue by leading people astray. But the reality to that verse is much more different than what you are being told. So let's jump right into it, and hopefully this can kind of clear up the confusion which Babylon has put out there. All right, so as usual, I compiled a lot of scriptures. I've done a lot of research to gather all of the ones that fall in harmony with this particular verse so that you can understand what's really going on with this concept. So let's read it. John 3:16, for Elohim so loved the world. I highlighted that in quotations because that'll be the discussion today. For Elohim so loved the world that he sent his one and only son, or his only begotten son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. So right when you read this verse, immediately you'll have Christianity, Jehovah's Witnesses, and a lot of the mainstream religions already try to throw an interpretation on this that has nothing to do with what the scriptures are saying. They'll be like, see, it say the world, so let's take that exactly how it is, literal, the world, there's everybody, everything. That's the whole world, right? And that's funny because that's not what the verse meant when it said world, and we're going to easily prove it. So if the determining factor of Elohim's love for the world is who he sent his son to, right, that is pretty easy to establish if you read the scriptures. Let's jump right into it, and then we can get into the question that I posed underneath. Who is the world in its context that the Messiah was sent to? And let's ask the Messiah himself who Elohim sent him to save. So let's really break down what John 3:16 mean, and let's do it not with interpretations from religion. Let's go into the scriptures and let's reason from that, which Jehovah's Witnesses claim to do, but they actually don't do that. They reason from the watchtower, and Christianity reasons from whatever imagination hits them at the time. So let's jump right into it. Matthew 15:24. But he answered and said, what did the Messiah say? I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel, which the correct terminology of that word is Yasharel, because they are called by the name of the Father, right? So he's only sent to the house of Israel. So Elohim so loved the world that he sent his only son. And where did he send him to? According to his son, I am not sent but only into the house of Israel to discover the lost sheep. So now you see the context of what the world was referring to. And we're going to go into more scriptures in case you're still in denial as to what that meant when it said the world. Because when you say whosoever believes in him, you have to understand that when Israel started to fall and act like the Gentiles, what happened? They got scattered into the four corners of the earth, and they lost their heritage and their history as time progressed. So they was even living like that of the Gentiles. So what happens, as Paul brought out in Romans, is they have to be regrafted back into their own tree. Right? Because the downfall of them is what even brought salvation to the Gentiles, to where Yahweh at least showed them mercy according to how they, respond to his people, his son, and his Torah, and so forth. But even with Romans, they butcher the heck out of that too when they say there's neither Jew nor Greek and all of this stuff. They take the whole book out of context. And it's funny because that's my favorite book. So I love when they break up Romans. But anywho, so let's tell you that, again, that it's two different contexts from a scriptural standpoint when it refers to world. And then you can see clearly that he was referring to Israel in the context of John 3:16. Clearly, that's why the Messiah said he was only sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel when he was confronted by a Gentile. And he still saved her, and she was healed by means of her faith by touching on his outer garment. But he made it clear to her, although you can benefit from this as a Gentile, let's get it clear. The primary purpose as to why I was sent down here from my Father was to save the lost sheep of the house of Israel, because they actually needed saving. They was under a curse. They was scattered. The entirety of the Gentile nations had it set against them, had it set out against them, was trying to kill them, got them cursed in the first place, influenced them to behave like them by means of making calves and statues, all of the customs in which the nations was already doing, right? And then they always want to tell you how Israel fell, but they don't tell you how the nations played a primary role in regards to that influence. And yet they think that Yahweh reject his own people and just replace them with the people that was always doing this stuff. It's really weird. But let's get into it. I don't want to rant too long. So Even in Luke 19:10, he tells you again, for the Son of Man is come to seek and to save that which was lost. The nations wasn't lost. They made it clear and they made their bed and they laid in it. The Gentile nations, also referred to as the heathen, right? Which is a whole separate world. They already had gods or Elohims that they served, and statues and idols and all of these things, of which the Israelites started to get influenced, and many of them copied that. Okay, so let's get it clear. The nations was never lost. They already made their bed. Israel got lost because they was once under the fold of their father's protection in the camps and so forth, right? Being led by Elohim by means of the prophets, all of which was related, right? Hebrews, Joshuaites. And then how they get lost? Because they got their house abandoned. They got scattered to the four corners of the earth. Hence, the Messiah came to save them from themselves and from the curses of Deuteronomy chapters 28, along with the burdens of all of the things that the nations was doing to them. Okay, this is more than just sin and death. He was talking about the sins of Israel that he was coming to wipe away so that they can have back the arrangement of the covenant, because the covenant is a promise that can never be undone. So Yah has to become whatever is needed to save that of which was chosen, because that's his purpose and he don't go back on that. Okay. But, religion be like, nope, he just gave up because, y'all couldn't do it and they didn't listen. So y'all couldn't figure out a way because, he's so, like, it sounds so dumb. He becomes whatever to get his purpose done, but he couldn't get his purpose done because people messed up. So y'all couldn't get it done. Oh, gosh. So once again, you come to say the lost sheep of the house of Israel, right? That's what was lost. So 1 John 2:15 even tells you that it's two different contexts for the world. And let's prove it. Do not love the world or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in them. So let's go with the ideology of what the church and religions teach. So the world is everybody. So y'all love the whole world. Yet you see in John also it's telling you that you can't love the world or anything in the world. And if you love the world, you don't have to love the Father within you. So you see the transcrepancy? Is it a contradiction, or are you misinterpreting what the world means in each context? See, you see, the Bible is not a contradictory book. The issue is all these religions try to throw a spin on it. And when you put a lie on a book of truth, it will always be contradicted. But if you believe in a lie more than a book of truth, of course you're going to believe the Bible is a contradictory book. So hopefully they can clear up the confusion in people's heads when they don't understand precept and lines and so forth. You have to know the context. And that's why these westernized European biblical scholars that stole these books put in all of these confusions with the way that they was interpreting and translating the Hebrew so that they can confuse you and push their ideology so that you couldn't have the truth pierced into your heart. But when you have the power of the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, of course, you can see past the illusions. So once again, it's a different context for the world. So clearly it's two different worlds, right? A world in which he loves and a world in which he's no part of that he hates. So let's go again. James 4:4, you adulterers. Don't you realize that friendship with the world makes you an enemy of Elohim? I say it again. If you want to be a friend of the world, you make yourself an enemy of Elohim. So again, talking about another world. Because if you want to be a friend with this world that you that you think he was talking about 3:16, you're an enemy of him. So how can he say, I love the world so much I'm going to send my son, but then he hate the world so much that you can't be a friend of it? It's two different worlds, guys. And it is as simple as that. And you know it's two different worlds because it makes it clear. And we're going to touch even more verses. So if you read John 15:18 and 20, and John said way more than just that precept, but they don't want to read all of the other stuff that John said because they know then that lie of it's everyone falls apart because it's not everyone. And that's not what he was talking about. He was talking about Israel putting back that faith and belief in him so that they can get right back grafted or regrafted, I should say, into the tree that was already theirs. The Gentiles are the unnatural branches, the wild olive shoots that, well, he will at least show mercy upon, provided if they follow the regulations under Israel to become part of the citizens that will live under the kingdom. They are not the kingdom, okay? And Paul made that clear, but somehow they turned it into I'm a spiritual Israelite. I don't say nothing about no spiritual Israelite in the Bible. How can you spiritually be of a tribe? It's so weird. But let's read it. And it's telling you that's only talking about the Israelites, even in this precept. If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. If you belong to the world, it will love you as its own, as it is. You do not belong to the world, but I have chosen you out of the world. That is why the world hates you. Remember what I told you. A servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will persecute you also. If they'd obey my teaching, they will obey yours also. So this is the Messiah telling you how you know who his chosen people are, even right there. Now, many people will say, see, it's Christians or it's Muslims or it's Jehovah's Witnesses because, people be hating on us. Okay, all religions fight amongst each other. If that was the actual truth, then all religions are his chosen, because all of them face some form of persecution, because the Christians be beefing with the Catholics beefing with the Muslims beefing with the Arabs. They are the Arabs. They beefing with the Jesuits. So if that was the determining factor, then I guess everybody that faced somebody yelling at them and hating what they were saying is the chosen. Obviously, that's not true. This is talking about an actual people, a lineage and a heritage, or actual race of people, which is what Israel is. Israel is more than just the landmass. It's the people that make it up. And those are his chosen. I made that clear in all the other verses that we read in my previous videos. His chosen is Jacob. Jacob is who he loves. Jacob is who he changed the name to Israel, right? And that's his chosen. That's who he loved. That is his chosen seed, in which it was reckoned through Abraham, right, by means of Isaac, and of course then Jacob, who's Israel. So he made it clear that his chosen is the Israelites, and it will always be that way because he made a covenant, and the covenant was an everlasting thing that could never be nullified. Many scriptures continue to tell you that it's everlasting, it is forever, it will never be nullified. Even if they violate it, then they will go into captivities and forms of where their house get abandoned, but eventually it will still lead to the restoration of Jacob. You even have a whole book in the Bible that talks about the restoration of Jacob, and they'll get it all back anyway. The unworthy just will be cut off from it and killed by means of their disobedience, but Israel don't get rejected as a nation. Plus, he has a remnant within them that he makes sure, because he get his purpose done. So it's so weird that notice talking about a race of people that's getting persecuted by means of who they are according to their bloodlines. They're facing persecution by means of racism. They're facing persecution by means of systemic racism. Persecution by means of constantly being robbed as a people, constantly being targeted by police brutality, constantly being treated badly because of the color of their skin, constantly being treated badly because of the texture of their hair. Y'all know what this is talking about, but a lot of people want to bypass that and throw this religious spin on it to try to justify themselves as being the people of the book. This got nothing to do with Christianity, Jehovah's Witnesses, Muslims, Islam, and none of that stuff. This book is about a people, and these people are Yashruelites, right? The nation of Israel, right? The Hebrews. And this ain't got nothing to do with all that other stuff. All those came from the Gentiles. But of course, now the Gentiles are in power, as Israel is in exile for right now, before the regathering takes place. So they putting a spin on it and telling you the same things they did back then. He rejected his people, contradicted by the Bible, or the laws are done away with, contradicted by the Bible. They misinterpret because they don't have the wisdom to understand. Y'all blind them. And that's written. So he's saying if the world even obeyed his teaching, they would have listened to us. The world don't listen to you speak this truth. That's why you get a little views on these videos. You get a lot of hate in the comments, and you get some dislikes because they don't care. They like their illusion. They like their whitewashed version of the scriptures. They like their westernized names of the scriptures, and they don't care about the truth because they part of that world that he was referring to as the world he don't like. And we'll touch on that too, of what that world is. If you look in 2nd Ezra 6:9, right? For Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. Esau is the world that is now in power right now. That is the world of Edom. Edom conquered all of these nations in the known world, inculcated the indigenous of the other sons, minus Shem, right, into the deterioration of the genetic code. That's why he laid Esau bare. You see the lack of the pigmentation that is present within them, and it will serve as an identifying mark as to who all was part of that system, so to speak. We're not saying everybody has that color bad, but we just saying that this was a mark to show you those in which were not the chosen, because the melanin was never be stamped out of the Israelites ever. And all this stuff is actually written, but people don't read the entirety of the scriptures. They just take it as, oh, you're being hateful, when really religion teaches that, hey, they whitewashed everybody and then teach the book from a racist standpoint, and then try to tell you that all black people came from a curse in Canaan, when all 3 sons was black to begin with, and Adam and Eve was placed in the regions of Africa before it was called Africa. So you judge really who's pushing the racism here. Clearly it's the religions. Christianity is literally built upon racism and was founded by racism. But whole nother video. So Esau is Edom, and Edom is the rulership of this system of the people that sits in charge, right? And don't forget that Edom mixed with Japheth's lineage, and you know that Japheth had the DNA alteration from the Neanderthal and the Denisovans. Whole nother video, but really pay attention to that stuff. So let's prove it again. So Esau is the world of Satan. 2 Corinthians 4:4. Satan, who is the god of this world, has blinded the minds of those who don't believe. That's the nations. They are unable to see the glorious light of the good news because they are spiritually blinded, right? And Satan takes over those in which who are blind. Even if an Israelite decides to take part in that, he'll get blinded. And it's hard to be hardened by Elohim, and he'll be given over to the devil. So they don't understand this message about the glory of Hamashiach. His name is not Jesus Christ. I say this every video, but people still would stick to that pagan name, right? Which has no basis with the Hebrew. It's more so Greek, who was actually the enemies of the Messiah, and who is the exact likeness of Elohim. So clearly you can see here again, it's two different worlds. You have the world of Israel, which is Jacob was the progenitor of through Abraham. But when I say progenitor, I mean that Jacob's name was actually Israel, and then you get the term Israelites of what they was called after that. Of course, it would start with Abraham, who's the father of many nations, but through Isaac and Jacob, Yah said, will thy seed be reckoned. He never said it was going to be through all of the other nations and other sons and everybody else. And the scripture actually tells you that just because you born through Adam and Eve don't make you Israel, or just because you came through Abraham, but you didn't come through the specific family tree of Abraham, Isaac to Jacob to everything that falls after that. You are not Israel. But everybody just jumping in trying to say, hey, I'm that, and they don't fit the curses. They don't fit the identifying marks of the times. They're not even scattered. They never been in the slave trade, which was part of the scattering and how they got into places where they are. They're not facing racism, persecution. They're not the highest people in the incarceration rates in the jail systems. They have a language and a heritage. The people that are Israelites don't. So you got people that's faking like them in the land right now, which don't even match the prophecy at all, because it's supposed to be peace when Israel go over there. I mean, it's a whole nother story, but clearly you can see yet again and again that when you read John 3:16, the world in which Elohim was talking about was the world of Yasharel, which is Israel. Okay. And it's talking about the Israelites in this context because they are his world, the apple of his eye that procured your treasure, the people in which he forever has his favor and grace upon. So when the Mashiach, the Messiah, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, came, right, was really Yahusha Hamashiach, right, Yahushai. He even faced the treatment no different than what you would consider an Israelite. And if you didn't watch my other videos, clearly, if you do your research, the Israelites are the Negroes of today. All 12 tribes are Negroids, okay? Don't get confused with some of our people pushing that chart. Israel always had splits where some was evil and some stick to the word. And some, many was mixing with foreigners and trying to put them in, and y'all didn't like that. And you see the same thing happening today with people freestyling charts that nobody really proved genetically. They just had some random dude that founded the religious aspect of it and threw this whole spin on it himself. He was actually put in place by the very enemy, yet they claim to be against him. Whole nother story. But all 12 tribes are Negroids, okay? Period. Right? Because Shem is a progenitor of Negroes. So this whole foreigners in it, it's a whole nother story. The foreigners came from either Japheth or they came from either Ham, like that of the natives and everybody else. Okay? If you don't know that, you really have to do your research. The Israelites didn't even know what America was when they touched this land. They touched it as slaves. The natives been occupying this land for a long time. And they came from over, where everything started, either from Ham or from Japheth. Anywho, so when you read Elohim so loved the world that he sent his one and only son, and then his son even tells you out of his mouth that I am only sent to the lost sheep of Israel, they both telling you the same thing because they are always in harmony with each other. He sent to Israel, so Yah is the one that sent him to Israel, his only begotten son. That's the world he was talking about. And that it's not this pagan heathen world, this world of Satan, ruled through Edom, ruled through racism, hatred, divisions, Babylon the Great, which is all these religions that's claiming that they the ones. It's funny. These are the things in which he hates. That's why he even say in the scriptures, Esau I hated, Jacob I love. Y'all don't like this pagan world. He actually hates it. And if you be a friend of the world, you become his enemy because that's how much he hates it. So if you really pay attention to precept and line upon line, you get the context of what these things are talking about. But if you blinded by the preconceived notions of religion, like Christianity, Jehovah's Witnesses, and all of these pagan customs that they throwing in there, you're going to get thrown off whenever you see a verse. Because they're going to just start telling you stuff that ain't even written. They're going to start freestyling it. Well, you're spiritually part of a tribe. And he don't deal with the Israelites. Because, when they rejected the Messiah, they're going to come with all that stuff. Right? And it's hilarious because when you know the Bible, you can shut all that down in like 2 seconds. I don't matter what verse they use. I can use the whole book because that's what you're supposed to do. But they don't put it in that way. So much love to everybody. And basically what we're saying is that we're not saying that if you're a Gentile or of the nations, the heathens, that you can't be saved. We're saying that the nations only can become part of the fold within the tree by their submitting to the real Messiah, Yahushua HaMashiach, right? And submitting to the nation of Israel. That's what you even pray in that prayer that the Messiah taught us to pray about. Thy kingdom come. The kingdom is Israel. That's the nation in which he chose to rule over the world. So you pray for a kingdom in which the Messiah is king over. He's the king of Israel. He's even born through the same lineage through Miriam, who they call Mary. And he's an Israelite in that regard. Scriptures actually tells you that. That's why he's the root of David. And according to the very strict bloodline of Israel. And he couldn't be born through the other nations. So the other nations have to still prove their way. The Israelites, he already know them. He know his sheep and those that are called by his name. They're Yashraelites. His name is Yah. The Messiah's name is Yahusha, right? Yahweh Shai. Yeah. Hallelujah, right? But a lot of people, they don't want to understand truth. They like their religions. They like singing their songs. They like believing that they can do whatever they want to do. Everybody's just acceptable. You can be gay. You can be a murderer, a killer. You can believe whatever religion. You're good. All you got to do is just say his name. And then they say a pagan name at that. And they don't even know that the real name actually is giving praise to Yah. But it's hilarious. And it's also sad that a lot of people don't want to see the power of the truth because they are being spiritually blinded by the Creator himself. And all the while, they think they being woke. But Satan already got their minds. But let them tell it. Satan got everybody's minds that don't believe what they say. But the scriptures do tell you how Satan gets your mind. If you don't believe in a real Messiah, you don't believe in the nation of Israel, you don't get the power of the Ruach operating over you. The indwelling of it only go to his people. So long story short, the world that John 3:16 is talking about is not this whole world. It's not every nation of every people and all of that stuff. The world is the nation of Israel. That's Yah's world that he sent the Messiah to. And that's how the world will find peace and Shiloh and Shalom and Shalom. Okay? So do y'all research always. Make sure line be upon line, precept upon precept, and stop believing what these pastors and religious leaders are saying. They all have agendas and they're all put in place by the heathen nations to continue to falsify and not give you the true power of the scriptures. That's how they stay in power. Because when Israel actually begins to continue waking up, Yah comes back, regathers his people, and all these nations will fall. He's actually going to literally wipe them off the face of the earth. That's why you got to get out of Babylon. It's all religion, guys. The Bible is not a religious book. It's a history book of a kingdom under their king and their Elohim. Religion is a man-made concept that was inculcated into the books that was stolen from the Hebrews so that the heathen can gain power and influence and keep the Israelites in spiritual darkness while they was under exile. But now we waking up, right? Because Yah's calling back his people because the end of the world is drawing nigh. Get y'all heads right, man. And much love, spread love, not hate, but teach truth. Shalom, all power and praise to the Most High, Yahweh, Yahuwah, Yah, Yahweh, and to the Lamb, Yahushua Mashiach, Yahushua, Yahweh Shai. All right, Shabbat Shalom.